have an unidentified flying object.
I'm Mike Dukakis, and you're listening to Dr. J Radio Live.
I'm Jack Oswald, and you're listening.
This is Hudson Hamay, and you're listening to...
I'm Richard C. Hoagland, and you're listening to...
I'm Art Bell, and you're listening to Dr. J Radio Live.
We have an unidentified flying object.
Welcome back to another episode of Dr. J Radio Live. I'm your host, Dr. J, host of Dr. J Radio Live, of course, and we are broadcasting from the City of Angels, globally, may I add. We have networks in the UK, South Korea, Australia, but mostly here in the United States. Folks, you all recall in 2016 when Donald Trump ran for president, for every politician I had on the show, whether it been a Republican, an independent, a libertarian, or even a Democrat, every single one said that Hillary Clinton would win. Yet the next 20 to 30 guests said clearly that Donald Trump would win. One of the main reasons was because he said things that everyone else has been too scared to say. Well, today joining us is another Senate candidate who I believe is probably the most talked about politician in the 2018 midterm elections. For one, he's taken on a establishment Democrat, and he has the power to unseat her. And more importantly, one of the biggest things that is talked about during these midterm elections is with this particular candidate that he's debating as we speak. That person happens to be Senator Elizabeth Warren. What is one of the biggest things of debate right now is her heritage. And one of the things I love about this candidate that you're going to hear from right now, Doctor, may I add that, Doctor, 4 degrees from MIT, medical doctor, PhD, well-rounded, fully intelligent person, and of course a businessman, and that happens to be Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai. Dr. Shiva, how are you this afternoon?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on your show. I'm looking forward to this interview.
It's a pleasure because I would do anything to actually help. As much as I try to be non-biased on the show, certain issues I usually have to, my true colors come out. For instance, we had Dr. Jerome Corsi on the other day, and I couldn't help not talking about the fact that there is some serious things going on with the DNC and going back to when Hillary ran for president. But let's talk about your candidate today and what your slogan is for your race. The fact that it takes a real Indian to defeat a fake Indian. When did you first come up with that slogan, and how did you realize that obviously going after so-called Pocahontas, as she has been labeled by both sides of the aisle at this point, is one of these strategies to bring awareness to the people that it's not okay to lie about your heritage?
Yeah, look, the slogan, only the real Indian can defeat the fake Indian, I believe will go down as one of the top probably 5 slogans in political history. Mark my words, people will be doing PhD thesis on this 20 years to come. The reason is that slogan, as any great slogan, has multiple layers to it. On the one hand, it's the apparent issue of here's a woman who lies about her heritage. It's a great piece of artwork. You have an Indian guy next to a woman with a headdress. It evokes lots of emotions. We get a lot of people honking, loving it, and then once in a while you get the vocal minority who's so vocal that they try to shut it down. And it's because that it brings a deeper truth about who lies and who cheats. It brings a truth about who is controlling narratives and people wanting to shut down this power of, graphic design combined with, great wordsmithing to build a piece of political artwork, which essentially goes at the heart of the establishment, which is all based on a bunch of people who lie for a living. And that's what it brings. So there's many, many layers to that slogan. How did we come up with it? It was almost natural because I'm a real Indian, real in many ways, and she's fake in many ways. So, and then you take it to a higher level that I represent, everything that embodies the spirit of America, working people, people who create, an inventor, a scientist, an educator, an author, which is what Massachusetts was supposed to be about, innovation. And she represents that's everything about being a leech and scumming off people, right? A lawyer, a lobbyist, a person who lied to get a job at Harvard, a person who lied on two major quote unquote scientific pieces of work, which were just recently found out in March. And I think that's going to be bigger than the Pocahontas thing, where she basically made up fake science to say that 62% of businesses were going out of business because of high medical bills, and that was the foundational basis of Obamacare. We all needed to get on big insurance. So what you're talking about, and then when you unravel it even further, you find out that this woman's part of Harvard, and Harvard is the epicenter of the deep state, a $40 billion hedge fund masquerading as a university. So it's a very, very powerful slogan, and I feel fortunate to have gone through the journey as a legal immigrant coming from India, going through the public schools in this country, playing baseball, mowing lawns, having great public school teachers, and then going to MIT, which, by the way, I didn't need to go to validate myself. I invented the first email system long before I came there, but I leveraged the MIT brand in some ways today. So when anyone asks who the hell you are, they say you have 4 degrees from MIT, and for whatever fortunate reason, that's seen as though you've done some good work, when that's not what I'm about. What I'm about is I'm actually a fighter, and we can talk more about that.
And that is definitely something I want to talk about, the fact that you are a fighter. But let me interject one thing that you mentioned, which is a very key word. You mentioned the fact that you're an immigrant, but a legal immigrant. And I have to join you for this battle because I really get bothered all the time when I hear that we need to be paying for illegal immigrants and how we should open our borders. The reason is the same reason as you, is I had 2 parents who came here from tiny little villages in Greece, didn't know how to speak Greek, or English, had no running water, no electricity. They came here, got naturalized, and flourished. Never once did they ask for any signs to be put up in Greek that say stop. Never once did they ask for a translator in court or whatever it had been. So for all these people who are coming here illegally, as you went to the border with Sheriff Joe Arpaio in Arizona, I think is one of the biggest things that separates people from the Democrats and the Republicans, which also brings another key question in, is you're running as an independent. Can you talk about that real quick before we jump into the fact that...
Well, look, the bottom line is, let me just make one point. You mentioned President Trump. Trump is not a Republican or a Democrat. He hijacked the Republican Party, and a guy like him was able to do that because he was in everyone's living room on The Apprentice, and they underestimated his acumen. In Massachusetts, fundamentally, the point is Trump is an independent, okay? He was part of the Reform Party, et cetera. In Massachusetts, there's one party. It's called the Democrat Party, and it's got 2 faces to it. I ran as a Republican. I gave them the opportunity. I was getting standing ovations at every Republican town committee meeting. The Republican establishment was so afraid, first of all, they're equally, and I'll get back, we'll discuss race, as racist as Democrats, but more importantly, they don't want qualified people running. They don't want everyday people running. They don't want a working guy like myself. What they want is they want their own charlatans. They want their own career politicians. They want people who they can control, who basically want to, perpetuate the deep state. They want to perpetuate the establishment. And I dumped the Republican Party, and we went independent. And it's the best thing we did because this race, it was a forlorn conclusion that Elizabeth Warren was going to win. We're the ones who've made this race interesting. You just said that we're probably the most talked about race in the entire country.
It's very true.
The real Indian, fake Indian, we're down out on the street. We're in a street fight here, and you're talking to an MIT guy who's got 4 degrees, but I also know how to street fight. So they don't know how to deal with us because we're coming at them from different ways, and we get our news out there. Yet the local media in Boston and Massachusetts is so afraid of us, they do not cover us. And so we're running as independents because that is the spirit of this country. Nearly 60% of Massachusetts voters are independents. They're not Republican or Democrat. And what they keep bullying people to do in a recurrent, disgusting process in American history is to force them to vote for Republican or Democrat. And we don't need to do that because they always say you have to choose the lesser of 2 evils, but they don't. They got the better of the best, which is me. And, they got a guy who knows how to fight, who looks good, who's articulate, who's smart. I'm probably a triple or quadruple threat, and people like me are representative of the founders of this country who wanted to serve and had other jobs. I'm running a company that's worth a couple $1 billion. I don't need to do this. George Washington didn't need to do this. Franklin didn't need to do it. They did it because they loved this country. It was service, and then you went back. That's why they had 6 months off, right? Because they used to have to take the horse and buggy in and out. These guys don't need those vacations. They should roll up their sleeves and work. And they don't work, and that's why things like immigration don't get solved, because they have no intention of working to solve them, because the Republicans make money off cheap labor. That's how the stock market works, and the Democrats use it to get votes.
That's right. That's right. And I'm glad you actually put it that side, because it applies to both sides. A lot of people don't talk about the fact that the right does benefit from the cheap labor. Usually it's just talked about that it is a free vote. Now,
yeah, I mean, if they wanted to solve this, they haven't solved the illegal immigration issue since the 1800s. They always kept, let's say, Mexicans in a very, very, nebulous state, because they wanted to use people for cheap labor. I mean, all of California is powered by illegal immigrants. And they don't. It's not like they care about these people. Sanctuary cities are basically illegal immigration plantations. That's what they are. And they put this word sanctuary city. It's nonsense. The whole thing is rubbish.
When I was a child, in the early 80s, I remember when I would go to the border, and there would be signs of children or say it would be like a mother holding children running across the freeway, and they were essentially signs for us not to hit them. And this is 10, 15 miles in from the border, and that's the first time I realized how big of a problem we had. I mean, we're talking 35 years ago. But regardless, this is something, like you said, that should have been fixed in the Senate, in the House. But things like, for instance, you talked about Obamacare. To this day, I'm still feeling the effects of that. Prior to, I used to pay $75 a month for Anthem Blue Cross. That same plan is now $1,500 a month. The co-pays have gone up exponentially. If you are elected, which I think you truly will be in the Senate, you talked about being a fighter. Can you talk about some specific points of the platforms that your campaign is running off?
Yeah, by the way, this August 24th, 25th, nearly several hundred MDs are hosting a town hall where I'm the featured speaker. Warren and Markey did not want to come, and all of these MDs hate Obamacare. First of all, this is how they manufactured a need, and that's how the deep state works. First of all, we don't need big insurance. The collusion between big insurance, big hospitals, and big pharma goes like this. It's like a 50-cent hamburger is selling for $500,000. And think about this, no one else can sell hamburgers, or everyone is forced to eat hamburgers, right?
Yes.
So they artificially inflate the cost of everything. So a simple procedure or a $10 generic is selling literally for $32,000 because of the racket that they're running. And by forcing people to get on big insurance, what they did was they played this game, a fear game. So why do people get insurance? Well, the reason people get insurance, they go, oh my God forbid something happens to me, I'm going to incur massive medical costs, right?
That's right.
Well, the key word in that is massive. So the medical insurance industry relies on massive medical costs. They want high drug prices and they want high hospital bills. Therefore, you say, shit, I got to get medical insurance. And so therefore, they sell you exorbitant medical insurance because you're saying, oh my God, I need that in case I get sick or something catastrophic happens, right? So that's the racket. So the medical insurance system, which is really interesting, it's almost counterintuitive. You would think that insurance would want lower drug prices and lower hospital bills, right?
Yes.
When they actually want it to be high, so you, out of fear, buy insurance. And then every year they crank up those premiums, which is pure profit, right? They say, oh, drug prices went up, so we got to increase by 5%. Well,
Yeah.
5% across, 100 million people, each paying, $800, it's quite significant. It's pure bottom line profit. And all of this was architected around the 70s, when these lobbyists were allowed to control politicians, who are basically sales reps for these big institutions. So Elizabeth Warren manufactured in 2005 and 2009 two papers, bogus papers that's just come out, where she put in these scientific papers that 62% of small businesses were going bankrupt because of high medical bills, okay? Well, 3 months ago, 3 other professors reviewed her data, and it's complete horseshit. It's completely fake data. It's only 4%. And so those two papers got Warren eminence as a bankruptcy expert, and it was the foundations of Obamacare. You see how they work? They
Yeah.
manufacture crap out of Harvard, and then that becomes religion, and that religion is then used to create public policy, which benefits insurance companies. So
And
who yeah, so that's this racket. And that's why we call it the military-industrial academic complex, because what they do is they manufacture, as someone said, consent, right? Or they manufacture truth out of whatever they want. And that game, very few Americans know. I know it, just like Trump was an insider to Wall Street and the New York business environment. I'm an insider to something even deeper than that, academia. And the 1 mile between MIT and Harvard is the epicenter of the deep state, which needs to be vaporized.
also, with regards to the medical industry, they have a vested interest in keeping people sick because if you're not sick, you're not paying for the doctors, you're not paying for the doctors, you're not paying for the medicines. And as you mentioned, that is a huge business. If you turn on TV, any channel, what are you going to see the most commercials of? New medications. I mean, it's almost a sick thing where they're trying to sell you medications for symptoms of other medications, which are symptoms from other medications. So, as you mentioned, this is one
The
huge
average the
racket.
average 82-year-old is on 12 drugs, and no one even knows the drug
That's
interaction among them. 12
sad.
drugs for
That's
the
sad.
average, and the drug industry, from the time a manufacturer makes it to the time it gets delivered to the patient, goes through a group of people called GPOs, group purchasing organizations, which actually write these contracts that no one else is able to review. No transparency. Those contracts allow them to give doctor administrators kickbacks to support the distribution of drugs. Kickbacks including, 7-star hotels.
Wow.
And Congress allows this in 19, and very few people know about GPO kickbacks. $500 billion in waste. So the first thing I would do as a U.S. Senator, sponsor a bill to basically make GPO kickbacks illegal. Number two, so there you've eliminated $500 billion in waste. Right there. $500 billion for the GDP, by the way. The second is we don't produce enough doctors. We have less doctors per population than Cuba does. Cuba, by the way, produces a ton of doctors. They actually export doctors, and everyone, rails against Cuba. But here's the deal. In America, by the time a medical student comes out and even wants to be a family practitioner, they have $500,000 to $1 million in loans.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Because they have to go to 4 years medical school, 4 years,
Bachelor's.
their actual practice, their specialization, and then obviously before that 4 years undergraduate. My view is right after college, right after high school, you can go right to medical school. Every other country does that. Right away, you say 4 years. We need more primary care physicians on the ground, not in big hospitals, but in local places where, you go see your doctor, he has time to spend with you, and that's where health comes from. Third piece is we need to clean up the public food supply. Elizabeth Warren voted for the Monsanto Protection Act. Monsanto is a company that created Agent Orange. They're the ones who polluted the entire food supply. They're the ones who poison our children, and Warren voted yay for them. She's a complete, as I say, a scumbag, lawyer, lobbyist. And I use the term scumbag. I've said this before. It's a technical term. It's a waste engineering term. It's a scum that's on the top of the septic tanks that you put into a bag. That's what it is. It's not this is not in the dictionaries, but that's what it actually is. So we need to recognize that these people do not deserve our respect. They, from end to end, their entire careers have been done in a criminal way through fiction and through lies. They do not work hard. They think they're smarter than everyone else. That's why they think they know better, because they know how to work the system.
You're absolutely right there too. There's a lot of people use this saying, "I hear you talking, but you're not saying anything." And there was a few things that I was watching on Elizabeth Warren when she was arguing for something in the House or the Senate, and I couldn't think of anything better to describe what she was saying as "I hear her talking, but she's not saying anything." She literally was making no points by trying to embellish the words and make them sound like she's smarter than anybody else. Yet when you really break down what she's saying, it was like A plus B equals C or something that generic, just with different words that most people in the population would not even understand. And so in essence, that was the purest form of an empty promise. Now, you mentioned Harvard. This is another good point that I've been meaning to bring up to you. Have you, okay, let's, for all the people out there who's clearly has seen Dr. Shiva on the news or heard about him, you're probably very aware that he's the only one to put the pedal to the metal and actually do something with regards to Elizabeth Warren's DNA test. He's been sending her DNA tests for Valentine's Day, for her birthday. How many occasions, Dr. Shiva? Dr. Shiva, you still with us?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Okay.
Sent it to her.
Yeah.
I sent it. Yeah, I sent it to her on 3 occasions. One was for her birthday on June 22nd. And the dope returned it.
Yeah.
I call her dope because it's a very stupid thing to do, because she should have just taken the test. She returned it back to me, and I tweeted it on the internet, which went viral everywhere.
Yes.
Right? That was the first time. Second time, around on Mass Ave, literally blocks from her home, we held for her a DNA dance party. I, in fact, sent an Uber over there to come and join us and take the test. She didn't take the test. And then, as you said, I sent her a very loving note on Valentine's Day. And she didn't take that either. So I was, again disappointed. But what's interesting is the Berkshire Eagle, which is a far liberal newspaper, very supportive of Warren, in fact, endorsed her in 2012, wrote an editorial saying, well, why doesn't she simply take the test and put this to bed? So Warren doesn't want to take the test because she's a liar. Warren's entire career, by the way, a lot of these Harvard professors' careers have been built like this. This is the whole scam there. Behind every major calamity, every major economic crash, you can point and you can find a Harvard expert behind it. This university is probably the most fake university on the planet. 30% of the admissions are legacy admissions, who you know. They spend a lot of time on their ivy growing and keeping their red bricks clean. That's what they really do. You don't have to be that smart to go to Harvard, by the way. There's a lot of dumb people there, and I know many of these people.
That is true. With money, I've seen it happen with my own eyes. Friends whose parents had so-and-so money, they were off to Harvard even though they didn't have the MCAT score or the LSAT score or even, just going straight from high school to their college. So you're absolutely right there.
Well, you have to understand, in the 1640s, Harvard and its liberal elites want to talk about reparations. We should change the name of Harvard University. Let's start with that. Here's a university in the 1640s was going bankrupt. And what they did was they scammed a bunch of Christian missionaries. And from those Christian missionaries, they told them, we're going to build a college for Indians on the Harvard campus. So they build a campus, a college, a red brick building, the second building they built for Indians, saying that they were going to educate them. Well, guess how many Indians they actually educated? Native Americans, 4 of them. They used the rest of the building for putting a Harvard printing press there and educating a bunch of their, by the way, these were British, right? They're privileged British colonialists through that university. And that's how they made it out of bankruptcy. They used the Indians. So I say, let's pay reparations to all the Native Americans who have been screwed over in this country. Let Harvard dissolve itself, defund itself, become a community college. That's what they were. Take its $48 billion, put that in a trust, and let's get Indians off the reservation. If they're so concerned, truly concerned about racism and reparations, let's start with Harvard University.
And having them be the example, of course. Now,
let them be the example. Let them put their money where their mouth is, and we'll see what they do. And you'll find out they'll do nothing because they use people. Black lives do not matter to them. Black lives matter to the extent that they serve as a propaganda bait when they need black people to serve some political interests.
That's right. And I think there's a lot of corruption in that whole movement where some people even say, is it going to be something where it's just something for profit at the end of it, like sort of Al Sharpton was in the early days of his movement.
This is what Jesse Jackson did all during the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
The truly last great black leader was Malcolm X. And 2 months before the speech he gave 2 months before he was shot was, I believe there will ultimately be a clash between the oppressed and those who do the oppressing. but I do not believe it'll be based on the color of the skin. Malcolm had come to the point where he realized it was the establishment of elites, that it was not blacks against whites, whites against blacks.
And that's what
And
we're facing
that's when
right
he
now.
got shot.
That's exactly what we're facing right now. We're dealing with the establishment versus the people of this country.
Yeah, and they have one law for themselves and another law for others. I'll give you my, when you want to talk about the criminal justice system,
Yes.
in Massachusetts, the governor of Massachusetts' son literally was assaulting a woman on an airplane. No arrest, nothing in the press, a little bit, and completely disappeared. Nearly 7 years ago, I was falsely accused and arrested, put in, chains and taken mug shots and everything. And it was, fortunately, I had a good lawyer, was outright dismissed. In Massachusetts, by the way, if there's any implication of domestic assault, even if the woman drops it because of the prosecutors and the judges, you get screwed. Well, mine was outright dismissed because of the absolute lies. Now, the right-wing Republicans try to present me as a dark guy who beats white women, when even though it was outright dismissed. And on the other hand, the Democrats try to represent me as a white supremacist, literally because I spoke at the Boston Free Speech rally, talking about the racism of the Democrats, defending the fact that poor whites in this country have been completely destroyed, highest infant mortality rate that's explosively growing, 3 times the national average in opioid addiction. So the left and the right are so threatened by me that they use race, and that's racism. Racism is not calling someone this word or that word or changing the name of buildings. Racism is splitting people up and, when needed, dividing people to profit, and that's what Elizabeth Warren has done.
Divide and conquer.
By the way, and the results are, in the midst of that, they have a PR machine which tries to represent themselves as for diversity and for inclusivity, how great they are, for Kumbaya, we shall overcome, singing these songs, celebrating MLK Day, blah, blah, blah. Well, here's the reality. The net worth of an average black person in Boston, miles from Elizabeth Warren's house, guess what it is? $8. $8.
Wow.
That means that's it. So, and then the average bourgeois white person who lives in Back Bay in Boston is $280,000. $280,000 and $8. And in the midst of all these people talk about how much they care for black folk or people of color. And by the way, they never talk about poor whites, right? Because if you talk about poor whites, you must be a white supremacist.
Racist, yeah, that's absolutely
right.
correct. And then the irony is, in the streets of Los Angeles, at least, who are the people that you generally see that are homeless? It's actually white people more so than any other demographic.
Right. There's a great graph that's out there from one of the research institutions. You will see infant mortality in every other Western country accelerating downward. In America, the infant mortality of poor whites is explosively growing. I mean, it's the inverse curve. I mean, that
sad.
curve says it all.
That is sad.
And that's, yeah. I mean, higher than blacks, higher than minorities.
But you'll never hear that in the mainstream news. That's the thing about it is that's always the fake news, and it's ironic to actually see it happen. I'll give you an example. Not too long ago on ABC, the World News, the caption during the news break or the break would say Ivanka Trump answers questions about the infamous meeting with the Russian lawyer. So then it comes back and the host.
Who cares about Russian collusion? The Russians and the U.S. have been meddling in each other's elections since the 1920s. It's what they do, right?
Oh, agree.
And I believe we should collude with the Russians because the Russians have done some great things. For example, they threw out Monsanto. They don't allow GMOs. They want to go fully organic. We should collude with them to figure out how they got rid of Monsanto. That's a good thing for the American people. 2 million Russians died fighting the Nazis, and we fought shoulder to shoulder with them. This whole thing with Russian collusion is complete nonsense.
It's actually something that started in Obama, and the sad thing is you have to people assume that okay, you have a new president, but he has to step in the same role as the former president, where he has to be enemies of this country. But why?
Well, another
benefit.
Harvard Law School grad. Obama never held a job. Harvard Law School grad, and that's what you have. You have a person who actually has never fixed anything, created anything, never innovated anything.
No.
and he's part of the deep state.
And he didn't really do anything when
Right
he
out of
was a
Harvard Law
junior
School.
senator as well, for that matter. But, so when you were also saying that different laws apply to different people, especially the elites, one name that always comes to mind is Teddy Kennedy during his little incident at, what is it, Chappaquiddick, right? How many hours?
Yeah, he killed a woman, was
Yeah,
never arrested,
never.
no mugshots taken,
Nope.
nothing.
Yep.
Right?
Anybody else
and recently,
done that?
by the way, I was recently punched in the face, as you know.
That's what I wanted to talk about a bit too.
As racist. And here's an interesting thing, right? When you really look at the criminal justice system, he was arrested, and then he was let go. When
Yes.
I was arrested, they put me in jail overnight.
Yes.
It was ridiculous. I had
Applying
done nothing
law
wrong.
differently
This guy was
people.
let go and then treated as a VIP by Warren, allowed to come back to her town hall.
Yeah.
And we are now dealing with the district attorney's office, and he's going to plead guilty. They said, this was his first offense. So I said, well, he should be incarcerated for a few days. He should learn his lesson. Oh, we don't want to do that. This was his first time. You see what I'm saying? So the signal that they're sending, I said, if that was Elizabeth Warren who'd been popped in the face, that guy would be in jail.
Absolutely.
I said, what is it, that a dark-skinned Indian guy can get hit by a guy wearing a liberal T-shirt, a white guy, a white liberal, and I'm a federal U.S. Senate candidate, and I get treated differently?
And one sad thing...
one law for them and another law for the rest of us. We're all peasants in their, on their, as I say, their white liberal reservation, plantation.
One thing I truly hope that can be fixed, and I know you're going to do this when you get to the Senate, is please change it to that when there's a federal shutdown, the senators do not get paid. That bothers the heck out of me. They cause a shutdown, and they still get paid.
That's a great point.
Yeah, and that's actually sad.
Senators get paid. First of all, I don't think any of them should get paid anything. They should take $1 in salary. Let me tell you why. This was supposed to be, you had a job. It was like jury duty,
Yes.
You came and you served. This was not supposed to be a full-time vehicle, and they shouldn't get pensions either. All that stuff should go away. None of that should happen. You want to serve, you serve. You live frugally, you come serve, and then go back to whatever the hell you're supposed to do. This is an honor to serve this country. It's not a freaking money-making opportunity.
It is.
And that will right away enforce term limits. People say, oh, shit, I can't make money at this. Oh, do I really want to run? So the people who will run are people who really want to run, who want to make sacrifices.
And I believe our founding fathers have probably intended for that. They never intended on this being going there for money.
Right. That's why they never put in term limits, because they never thought anyone would want to do this for lifetime,
Yes, because they should have served like they do in the military, where you're looking forward to your, the time you would finish, as opposed to looking forward to staying that much longer. And you're right, it turned into a giant racket with lobbyists and of course them getting paid during shutdowns. It's just an entire mess, or as our president calls it, the swamp. Here's another trivia thing that I think I know for a fact you know, and it seems to me that a lot of the general public seem to forget. You have minorities and people going into the Democrat Party. However, they seem to forget that during the time of Abraham Lincoln, it was the Democrats who were the slaveholders and fought against the 13th Amendment to abolish slavery. And they seem to forget that. And so when they're calling race or saying so-and-so is a racist, I think they forget to look in that mirror first and say, hold on a second, by identifying myself as a Democrat by default, I'm the racist, but yet that's not the way it's portrayed all the time.
Well, in Massachusetts, there's only one party. It's the Democratic Party, with some people calling themselves Republicans. Like in Massachusetts, the three other idiots running. One guy gave $250,000, $300,000 to Bill Clinton. The other guy had voted for Joe Biden. His campaign manager is a Saudi lobbyist. We call him Dirty, Dirty Deal. And he photoshopped a picture with himself shaking hands with Trump. And what's interesting is the Massachusetts swamp is so insidious that their new strategy is to create, they innovate. Massachusetts is known for innovation, but these guys innovate really bad things. And they're invented this new thing called the fake Trumper. The fake Trumper exists to suck back the independent-minded people who voted for Donald Trump back into the Republican establishment. That's what they're doing. And these people are the real snakes.
They
That's why I
are.
left the Republican Party.
Yeah.
So we need to destroy these fake Trumpers because their goal is to take advantage of the emerging movement of independence. That's what the Trump movement was. It was an anti-establishment movement. And they want to consolidate it back within the Republican establishment, which is essentially the, one wing of the Democratic Party. That's all it is.
I'm actually really glad you mentioned that about Donald Trump, because a lot of people even use the new term these days is that they're not Republican, they're not Democrat, they're Trumpican. That essentially it's a new party, just like you said, anti-establishment. And that's what really has driven people to the likes of never before in 2016, because he was saying things that everybody wanted to say but didn't have the guts. And you are doing the same thing, only to a better level, because you are truly represent the working man. You don't have that 15 years of media, of reality TV. You're just someone who straight goes, sees the problems in this country, runs on the platform of fixing them, and says what everybody wants you to say. And you've garnered not only attention but support from people or groups such as Blacks for Trump, and even Sheriff Joe Arpaio from Arizona, who's also running for Senate. He has officially endorsed you. Let's talk about some of these groups or the people in Blacks for Trump. How did they first reach out to you and identify that, hey, this is the candidate we're going to back because we see the establishment destroying us and we need to do something about it?
Well, look, Arpaio's only crime was that he was enforcing the laws of this country. That's his only crime, and anyone who tries to say he's old is completely out of their mind. We need more wise people like him. He drinks a lot of olive oil. He's in great shape. He's a good guy. He gets it, he knows truth, period. Blacks for Trump, they're smart people. They figured it out. They understand that the establishment exists, not to really help people, but to perpetuate themselves. They have their own colorful way of representing truth, which is in my view, is let 1,000 flowers bloom as long as they're pointing in the direction of truth. So I love both of these guys, right? They get it. They're fighters. And they're pointing people towards truth. And that's the most important thing here. Everything else is secondary.
Now, let's go back and since we're wrapping up here at the end of the hour, I want to talk about some debates with Elizabeth Warren, a.k.a. Pocahontas. Are any scheduled with you and her?
Well, here's the deal. You see, the debates, so it'll be a three-way race, me, her, and a Republican. The way you get on the debate stage is you have to be getting 15% visibility. I know we're probably at 70, 80% visibility. But when they ask the polling questions, one of the questions is, have you heard of Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai, right? Mm-hmm. They are purposely leaving out that question.
Oh,
okay.
So they're rigging it. They're stacking it against you.
They're trying to rig it. Yeah, that's why we want to nail them on this. That's why the rally we're holding today, tomorrow evening, you should get it out there. It's the anti-racist rally against Elizabeth Warren. We need to discuss race in this country, but not the way that they've been discussing it. We need to discuss race in context of the fact that there's racism against poor whites, there's racism against poor blacks, and they use race to divide people up. That's what Elizabeth Warren did, right? She used race for her personal benefit by using affirmative action. So we need to define racism as what it truly is, not what the elites have done. What's happened in this country, 10 people at Harvard University have defined what racism is. And they got really pissed off when I called them a racist. And that's what we need to get back to. We need to talk about the truth of who the real racists are.
I would think, as I said earlier, that Harvard has an interest in protecting the DNA test, but have you gone to them? I mean, obviously they're getting upset by calling them racist, but have you challenged Harvard publicly to have their former staff be tested, for Elizabeth Warren to be tested?
Repeat that again, please.
Have you challenged Harvard for them to implore Pocahontas to have her DNA tested so they can have it settled once and for all?
That's a good idea.
I would implore Harvard to do it.
I've asked them.
That way you can get them angry enough to force her to do it, which we all know what the answer is going to be, that she's not, that her high cheekbones do not prove, because you have people from the Cherokee Nation who have come on multiple shows and have said there is absolutely no record of her. And you have some from other tribes who have come on and say, take the test and this once and for all. So me and you both know the reason why she doesn't want to take it is because it's going to end her falsehood in probably her campaign, for that matter. So I would hope to see in the future that Harvard has to respond to this. Let's talk about your website, where people can find you, your Twitter, and of course you have some great stuff on YouTube that I've seen, and I will also be sharing with the world.
Sure. First of all, one of the important things to understand is that the establishment, before I give you the website, wants to make us be on the sideline, watching a sports game. That's what they want. Our campaign is about telling people that they shouldn't be on the sidelines but participate, because this campaign is not about me or any one individual. In fact, we got on the ballot, by the way, the first to get on the ballot, the first Indian American to get on the ballot, the first MIT scientist, the first everyday working guy to get on the ballot out of Massachusetts. And that hasn't even been reported by any of the mainstream media. I mean, it's historic. And we got on the ballot by not paying for any signatures. All the other campaigns either pay for signatures or they give people favors. That's how it happens. We did ours bottoms up.
True
But
grassroots.
What we want, true grassroots. So we want people to participate. And one simple way people can participate, because we're all busy, right? We're not all political hacks. We don't have time to go, volunteer all the time. But one way people can participate is they can go to shivaforsenate.com, Shiva for Senate, and on the store we have what's called the Road Warrior Kit. They are two magnetic signs which say only the real Indian can defeat the fake Indian. It's got a picture of me and the picture of the fake Indian with her headdress on. And those signs are so powerful because 500,000 people see them. And it's an easy way for people to slap those signs on. You'll get a lot of great honks. Once in a while, someone will throw you a finger or call you a racist. And it's a great opportunity to turn it out on them and say, look, you're the racist because you're supporting racism, which is what Elizabeth Warren perpetuated when she used her false identity that she was a Native American. That's real racism. So that's an amazing way people can help us. Obviously, people should come and help us with standouts. They can get T-shirts, but it's a total ground campaign. That's where people should get involved with us. And if you want to give us money, great, but I believe people's labor is more valuable than money.
And I do love the idea of having that Road Warrior Kit. That is something that people nationwide can have that will bring attention there. And something you mentioned at the beginning of the show.
500,000 people will see your Road Warrior Kit.
Yeah.
And you will see the reaction as you're driving around with it. It's an amazing experience because you politicized, you weaponized your car with a slogan that goes at something very, very deep. And and you'll see these white liberal racists get all freaked out. They'll get all freaked out and they'll start calling you a racist. And you say, no, you're the racist because you're supporting racism of Elizabeth Warren. That's racist.
It is.
Not that we put a headdress on there. You're out of your mind, right? Because, see, they try to govern racism. So that's a very powerful way. On shivaforsenate.com, obviously there's videos, there's great content, but I want people to participate. My running is a historic opportunity because we're running as independents in the belly of the beast, and everyone should get off their butt and go get those Road Warrior signs and stick them on your car and drive around with them and start having political discussions with people. And by putting that on, you're making a statement that I stand for truth.
And the best thing about this is, even though you may not have the local media covering it, you're going to have so much of an influx of national media covering you that anytime people would turn on the local news to hear the world news, you would be making the headlines. So I
mean, the bottom line is we're going to surround, as someone said, the city from the countryside, right?
That's right.
You surround it from the outer and you squeeze them. So, and the issue is, look, this media guys, they shouldn't even be called the press. They're basically corporate shills. They're not even media, they're just complete corporate shills. What you're doing is journalism. What a lot of the independent media is doing is journalism. These guys are not media or press. They're basically corporate shills.
Yeah, especially
That's all they are.
CNN, Communist News Network, and things like that. Yeah, it's pretty bad out
Yeah.
there. Well, Dr. Shiva, it's been a pleasure to have you. Of course, we will be supporting your race, and everybody can click on my
Thank
site,
you.
the banner, and it'll take you straight to Dr. Shiva's site. And everybody, please support him to unseat Pocahontas. This is Dr. J. Everybody, hang tight for our guest in hour 2. Excellent, Dr. Shiva. That was great. I will.
One
have
other
my
thing I want to leave
team
everyone with
cut
is
this
the
out.
following. Only a real Indian can defeat the fake Indian. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, everybody, what can I say other than boom goes the dynamite? Welcome to Dr. Shiva. He is definitely a great character. You could hear the background there. This interview was done while he was on his campaign bus. That's how dedicated he is. I implore anybody who lives around Senator Warren, or even, anywhere in Massachusetts or the surrounding areas, or even in DC, to go to Senator Warren or Pocahontas, whatever you want to call her, and implore her to take this DNA test once and for all. That was a very explosive interview, and there's not much else to say other than smiles and some giggles. I do also suggest you get his Road Warrior kit. It's pretty hilarious to see that little artist mock-up he's got where it says, "It takes a real Indian to defeat the fake Indian." It's got a picture of him, and just like he said, Elizabeth Warren in an Indian headdress. The art is better than, a picture means 1,000 words, more than that. Now we are going to shift topics, and we are going to talk about something that everybody can apply. Every single person at every corner of this earth can change the way they think about how their management, the brain management. The power of the mind is so unbelievable that a lot of people underestimate it. And remember this too, folks, that the way we're taught in Western thinking and generally in society, whenever you just have any sort of education, you're taught linear thought. And that affects you because literally when you're young, say the age of 3, 4, going on just before you start preschool, your mind is at its greatest. This is before it's corrupted with mainstream thought to think in such a particular way and to slow you down forever, which is why the next person we're about to speak, the course that he offers, if you're actually able to implicate it or to apply it to somebody young, before they start the federal school system in the United States or any Western school of thought or general school, as I mentioned, throughout the world, you will have easier results than someone who had gone through decades of school, including maybe through even a doctorate. So without further ado, let's bring back a favorite guest of Dr. J Radio Live, who happens to be the one and only Dr. Shannon Panzo. Dr. Panzo, welcome back.
Well, thank you for having me, Dr. J. I had to unmute my mic there for a moment.
No problem.
Hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So how you going today?
I'm doing great. Obviously, we just had this pre-recorded interview of Dr. Shiva because it was pretty hard to nail him down, as you heard me say, that it had to be during his campaign, on his campaign bus from one location to another, a truly grassroots politician. And I do hope he wins because he's garnered international fame. He's appeared on everything from Alex Jones to Fox News, and he's just one of those people who is a shock candidate, who says things that most people don't, or should I say, says things that people wish they could say. And I know that's why I just enjoyed taking a listen to him again as we were preparing for you. So as I mentioned right before I introduced you, as I was introducing you, I was talking about something about linear thought, how the further you go along in school, the harder it is to change fundamentally how your mind works. Meaning that if you spend as long as I did, for instance, in school, you go through your high school or your education through high school, then college, university, master's degree, and then a doctorate.
I have a more difficult time in changing the way I think than, for instance, my 2.5-year-old goddaughter, because she's unaffected by this school system. And your program, Zox Pro, teaches you to manage your brain so effectively where you can have be not just a photographic memory, but so much more. So let's talk about brain management as a concept. Explain it.
Okay. Brain management, I'll try to wrap it up into a nice, tidy little nutshell. Basically, everything that you do, everything you think of, every change you want to make, everything your body does, all your autonomic functions, everything that there is about you from top to bottom, from the time you're born to the time you die, all happens in the brain first. If you want to make yourself more, better, exceptional, extravagant, whatever you want your life to be, you should always start at the brain first. If you don't, you're depriving yourself of the essential key ingredient it takes to make a better you. Now go ahead.
No, I was just going to have you continue speaking. Otherwise, I was going to say the effect that the brain can have on matter, your mind. The power that of the mind is so great that it truly can affect matter.
Oh yes, yes, we can actually change the way things are happening around us simply because that's what we do. We can change these things sometimes inadvertently, and sometimes we can change these things if we just want them to change. And that's typically what is covered under law of attraction. But today with the brain management, what I want to bring up is about all these wonderful things that we have available to us when it comes to brain management. And one of the we were talking about the school system and such. Now the school system, before you ever attend school, whenever you're born with an eidetic memory. Now, the eidetic memory, if you will, is a photographic memory, but it's on all sensory levels. So we'll just call it, just for convenience sake, we'll call it the photographic memory. But the photographic memory is not just on the visual level, it's on all the levels, and this even includes psychic levels as well. So you have all these different types of information that come into you all the time. It's like the big picture show, if you will. And you're taking in all this information. You take it in this way naturally. So this is how you learn most things in a phenomenal way. It's easiest to learn this way. You learn the hardest things that there are to learn in life, including languages or multiple languages. There's all different sorts of things that you learn during that first 5 years of life that you typically would not be able to learn if you didn't have the eidetic memory. This is also the thing that raises us above all the other animals on this planet, is our brain power. And so we need to utilize that in that way. Now with the schooling system, once we get involved in the schooling system, what do they start teaching us? Well, they start teaching us reading. Well, reading goes in opposition to the eidetic memory, where we've learned everything so well and so naturally. And we're into this flow of learning. We're information sponges, and then we get slapped with reading. Well, in order to learn reading, what happens? Well, they tell us, that really, really good way that you used to learn? Well, set that aside. You're not going to use that anymore.
Basically, throw it away. Yeah.
Okay. We're going to teach you this different way to learn. And from this way, you're going to be able to learn so much better. Not true.
And let me say something true to your point that everybody can understand. For instance, the way we're taught to read is you go letter by letter in your mind. So what you're doing is you're looking at what letter it is, you're identifying it, and then you see the word, and then you vocalize the word. You vocalize the word internally, comprehend it, and then go on to the next one, and then ultimately you comprehend the entire paragraph or sentence or whatever it be. But if a lot of people will notice as they're reading anything, that what happens is your brain will get so bored that it'll immediately attach to something else, and you find yourself rereading it. That right there, if you didn't know already, is proof that your brain is thinking so much faster than conventional school has slowed you down to think. Am I right?
Oh, absolutely. The schooling system slows you down to a snail's crawl. You're literally crawling through the material whenever you're reading it, and really, it's not fair to you because you came from this point of view of having everything in a big picture format. You're taking it all in, and suddenly you're provided with nothing but tunnel vision, slow, repetitious, debilitating, literally. All this different information, very stressful. So they've absolutely turned the entire learning experience upside down. You wonder why people aren't so unhappy going to school. Well, quite often they are, simply because they're no longer learning. They would much rather be looking out the window, paying attention to what's going on out there, because that's what they're accustomed to. Well, they don't want you to do that with reading. They want you to focus on. They want you to focus down to such a minute degree. This is like if you ever went and you constructed a jigsaw puzzle. Well, you have a bunch of pieces there, right? Well, if you see the picture first, you can put the jigsaw puzzle together. What reading is like putting the pieces of the puzzle together without seeing the picture. It's a lot harder. It makes it nuts not having the picture in front of you.
That's right.
And this is what we're faced with. This is why learning goes dramatically downward from that point on throughout a person's life. It's because they've been taken out of the natural form of learning. Now, keep in mind, if this is taught along with what I'm talking about is using your photographic memory to take in information. If this is taught along with reading, well, you become better at both. That's fine. But no, the school system wants to obliterate your ability to use the photographic memory. They don't want you to use the photographic memory. They don't want you to be a genius by doing so. They want you to be ordinary, mediocre. A number, mediocrity, oh, that's the school system. That's what they want.
This is why I said that my 2.5-year-old goddaughter has an easier chance than someone like me who's gone through the entire school system through a doctorate, who has literally been slowed down by the system to read word by word, paragraph through paragraph, which ultimately becomes libraries of books. When before I even knew who you were or about Zox Pro, I had a perfect photographic memory that was fundamentally destroyed by the fact that they want me to be mediocre.
Right. Now, one of the things I talk to people about and I teach people about is what is called mental photography, which is a system that enables people to utilize their photographic memory to take the written word, in other words, the thing that you would normally read, supercharge that about at least no less than 100 times the speed of reading, no less than 100 times the speed of reading. That would put you around no less than 25,000 words per minute. Now, some people say, "Oh, that's impossible to read at that speed." You're right. It is impossible to read at that speed. But with mental photography, using your photographic memory, it's not hard at all. In fact, we have people doing 100,000, 200,000, 500,000 words per minute.
Up to,
using
I've
mental
seen a
photography.
million, right? Or 2 million words per minute. Has it gone that high?
Well, I'm already blowing people out of the water with the numbers that I'm showing for, but yes, we've had plenty of people using it for over 1 million words per minute. And we've had people take this to such fantastic degrees that I have to stop where I am, because we're talking about fantastic abilities. Well, guess what? We're all born with these fantastic abilities. If you had any imagination what your brain is capable of doing, you would understand you would understand the depth of what I'm talking about here. Your brain is capable of doing so very much, and yet we're asked to demand so little of it, especially if we're just going to school. The people that were out there doing absolutely genius work had no more time on their plate than what the average person has. You take a look at Einstein. You take a look at
Hawking.
Stephen Hawking, right? You take a look at any of these people. How much time did they have compared to the average person out there? They had exactly the same amount of time on their plate every day. What'd they do? They used their brain. They used their brain to get to where they're going. And there's so many other people that are just like this, and we can all be like that, except what is happening? We're stopped. We're stopped by the system. It is imperative that people, we're faced with problems today that people aren't even aware of. I recently brought up about the world population.
Oh, yes. That's a huge topic I'm hoping you can go into, because that actually scared me when I saw it year by year. Scared me.
Dr. J, we had a brief conversation earlier.
Yes.
How many people in that conversation, how many people did you think was occupying this planet at that time?
I honestly still thought we were close to a little bit over 6 billion. That's what everybody says, 6 billion.
6 billion.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually 7.6 billion and growing.
That's right.
30 years ago, MIT did a study to determine where this planet is going to top out at regarding mainly our food resources of what we can grow compared to our world population. And they came up with the number of 8.5 billion 30 years ago. At the current rate of growth, 8.5 billion happens in less than 10 years from now.
Based on your graph, because it's not just growing by a certain number per year, it's growing exponentially.
Right. And it's not my graph, it's actually somebody else's graph. I'm just the reporter. Now the problem being is we're at a critical mass, and the government is not talking about it. These are numbers they don't want you to know because it will scare the heck out of you, and it should. This is some really crazy stuff, because in less than 10 years, we are going to exceed the resources, the food resources of this world, based upon what MIT came up with over 30 years ago. Now, I don't know what they plan on doing, but some of the people that I talk to, they say, well, gee, it was so much easier back in the 1950s. It was so much nicer back in the 1950s. You had less than half the population on the planet that you have today. That's how fast this population is growing. People just don't have a relevancy. They don't have a clue as to what's actually happening. So what are we going to do here, folks? We can either dumbly sit by, watch it all take place, and then go around shooting each other because we're all starving to death, or, and that is actually what it'll come down to, or we start figuring some things out. And the only way you can figure some things out is to put brain power on your table.
And it has to start with each person at their own level. They have to do it within themselves first before they can help anybody else. So this is something that applies to everybody out there. Everybody can undo what you've been taught in the school systems, wherever you are in this world, and learn, or go, I shouldn't say learn, relearn what you were already born with, which is the photographic memory and the perfect memory, the perfect brain. In every level. And one thing you mentioned was psychic events. Let's touch on that for a bit, because it's really important for people to understand how powerful the brain really is.
Well, you have your 5 basic senses. Okay, you have seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, tasting. Okay. Then you have what is referred to as the 6th sense. These are things that simply occur outside of our normal awareness. Everybody has these abilities to one degree or another, but most people are in denial. Most people don't use these things. And yet, we all have them. They're God-given gifts. It is a matter of us simply taking possession of them, taking back what we already have, and utilizing these things for our benefit. Granted, what one person will have for a psychic talent will be different from another person what they have for a psychic talent. You'll have variations, you'll have different levels, and that's all fine. But most people are in denial that they even have these things. And yet, if you ask them, what kind of strange things does your children do? Oh, gee, you should see it. Well, they don't, and then the parents get scared. They don't even want to talk about it because they see what the kids are doing. And so, yes, these are natural abilities that we all have, and it's just that we need to get back in touch with using these things. But more so, just in general, I like to talk about what the brain can do, what you can do with your brain. One of the key things here is information. There's huge, vast volumes of informations out there that people don't even look at today. It's called the library. There's just huge amounts of information available to us.
You're talking about the Akashic records?
You hardly look at the thing.
Like Akashic records?
Well, Akashic records, we're dealing with universal knowledge and things like this. And those are available as well to us. We have to understand, whenever you go this direction, in order to deal with certain aspects, it is very important to approach these things with integrity, high integrity, because there are some things that are out there and some things that are being publicized today. Yeah, they sound really, really great, and I don't want to go into what those things are at the moment, because that's a different topic. But it's important, if you're going into doing things in a psychic nature, you need to deal with things with a certain level of integrity. If you don't, you end up damaging yourself. And I'm not talking about damaging, say, bruising or breaking a bone. I'm talking about damaging yourself for many lifetimes, if you will. And so to prevent from doing that, if you approach things with integrity, you're not taking on nearly the risk. A lot of the things that are out there that I bring into question are things that basically the rule book has been thrown away. Perhaps things that the military got off first, and now we're in the public market. And the rule book on how to engage yourself with these things have been thrown away. Well, maybe the military wants to act that way, but it's not really conducive to the average person out there, because if you're damaged goods, if you will, then there's certain problems that come along with this. Okay. Again, I really don't think that this is the focus of today's lecture, and really the talk about that is a very deep talk about consciousness and such, and there's that in itself is a whole topic that I really don't want to go into that today. We can do that some other time. I invite it, but today, this is, I want people to learn that there is a step that they need to take in a grand direction to make themselves wiser, better at doing what they're doing, understand how to negotiate themselves through this life that they're currently living in the best possible way, how to make themselves better, how to make themselves more. It's difficult. Using this method, it gives you an avenue to shortcut going through the pain of the process of learning all this stuff for yourself, because you can learn it so much quicker, with so much more intensity. Whenever you mentally photograph, the intensity that you're getting this at is 100 times the intensity of reading. 100 times. So if you're reading something, it would take you reading that same thing 100 times over to mentally photographing it one time. Well, gee, that's a big difference, because this way you learn it. You get the information.
Here's another problem when you read, though, is the retention level. You don't have the same retention level as you do when it's photographed.
Right. With the mental photography, it sends it straight to the long-term memory, where you've gotten it literally forever. You possess this information now forever. Now, when it comes to, as you amass your volumes and volumes and volumes of information using this process, things like lateral thinking become second nature to you. You start to understand how to take the basically unrelated information and combining it to create new things, inventions, ways of thinking, solutions. Well, the world is filled with problems. What we don't have is people out there finding solutions for these problems. Instead, we just seem to have more problems.
Right.
So it's up to us. If we want to make this place a little bit more livable, then it's up to us to make big changes in this environment. Don't always count on your politician to always make the right choice for you.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was actually the topic of the first half of the politicians definitely not having our what's the proper word? Not our safety, but yeah, they don't have their best intentions on us. It's always for the deep pockets of themselves. I mean, and if you think about it, the selfish gene that everybody possesses, I guess would sort of enable that. And if you're in that political system that is surrounded by lobbyists, surrounded by people whose job is to continually push money to have access to somebody else. So say you have this dictatorship of this one country who wants to, one person's freedom fighters is another person's terrorists. And so once this whole game is all laid out, what you really come out with is, instead of having someone who represents you for your best interests at heart, they're representing themselves and their local lobbyists, because whoever can give them the most money, that's what really counts. It always comes down to the dead presidents, the almighty dollar.
Well, some politicians actually enter office with a conscience, but because they see everybody else standing there with their hands open, taking the money, well, eventually they start thinking, well, why should I keep myself from doing that since everybody else is already doing it? So they buy in. And you can't really blame it. It is human nature. But on the other side, where is all this going? Well, we need to stop worrying about the special interest groups and worry about the people that actually get these politicians in office to begin with. They're the people that the politician is supposed to be representing, not the lobbyist.
That's right.
But that's who they're supposed to be there for. It seems like that takes a back seat these days. The media is no better. All they do is write things that are very one-sided in a lot of ways. I don't even want to go there because everybody knows it.
Well, that's
But
why we're thankful we have independent media such as this, because this is literally unfiltered, and we have the power to give people access to information that would normally be filtered or put aside for other interests.
Well, speaking of filtered information, I found out last year, and this is my observation and opinion, which I would like to think that I'm pretty accurate, but Microsoft had actually sanctioned my server. Now, that was basically stopping me from being able to communicate to a lot of my clients. And whenever I was able to finally track it down, I asked them, what's the problem? They wouldn't tell me. And yet they were sanctioning my entire server. And they were saying this and that, what have you, but they weren't actually telling me why they sanctioned it in the first place. So I told them to stop sanctioning my server. Instead of them releasing my server back to being able to get out there in the public, I had to actually change where my services were being located so that I had to take my services off my own server. It's nuts.
Yeah, that is filtering for sure. That is definitely. And there was another thing that happened to you too, but I'll let you finish with the Microsoft story, because this other thing that happened to you too is you call coincidence. Some people call too much of a coincidence.
Well, basically, I look at this as something that should not be happening. Okay, you hear about freedom of speech, you hear about all these good things that we're supposed to be representing in the world, and all I'm doing is I'm teaching people how to learn good things in a better way. And yet, I don't see why I should be having a problem like this. Somebody must have a problem with what I'm putting out there. Maybe the fact that I want to teach people how to be independent in their thinking, and teach people how to learn things better. Maybe the powers that be don't want that. I don't know. But it's pretty strange circumstance to me. Now, you had something on your mind. What did you have on your mind?
The explosion story.
Oh, well, about see, back in the early '80s, whenever I started all this, affiliated myself with the training and such. I took the training from Richard Welch, my mentor. And about 5 months after taking this training, now along the way, I had always used all the parts of the training every day, okay, because this was building me up. It was doing wonderful things for me. And so at that particular time in my life, I was working at an explosives factory. And so one day, I'm just going along, doing whatever I do. I do my exercises with the training. And one day I start having premonitions. Oh, well, this is interesting. I'm having premonitions that something bad is about to happen to me. Okay, well, I start paying attention to that because I've learned to do that. And I find that, okay, well, I guess it could be maybe an upcoming car accident, or it could be any number of things, but since I'm working with explosives, maybe I should take some steps to protect myself a little better. So I request a flame-proof lab coat instead of a flame retardant one. They provided that for me, and I brought in some extra hearing protection, things like that. And again, I keep getting these premonitions that something's going to be happening. Okay, fine. So I'm working the graveyard shift, doing my by the book inspection of the machine, doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. Whenever you're dealing with explosives, you go by the book. Okay, keeps you safe. Sometimes.
Usually.
Usually, it's supposed to anyhow. Well, what ends up happening is I go and I open up the primary boundary to do my inspection, and we'd just loaded up. The powder. This powder is called zirconium potassium perchlorate. It has 100 times the sensitivity to hydrogen gas with static electricity. So the stuff will go up in a heartbeat. It's very sensitive. So I open up the primary boundary, and at that moment, the entire machine explodes. And I catch a fireball right in the chest as the machine explodes. And luckily, I was the only one in the room when it happened. But at the moment it happened, something very, very peculiar took place. I was standing in front of the machine, and at the same time, I was standing over in the corner of the room watching it all take place. I had an out-of-body experience, but it's a little bit different. This is what some people may call translocation, where I was still completely aware of my body, but I was outside my body giving myself instructions. And so I gave myself instructions to turn around and head out the door. Now, the door that I was heading out was the one that opened to the inside, so that one didn't get blown off the hinges, but there was a steel door in the back end of the room which got blown completely off those hinges. The blast was so formidable that it shook the entire complex. They evacuated all the buildings, and they basically were coming back in to see what was left of me. So my supervisor comes back in. Basically, he's thinking, well, I guess I should take in the green garbage bag to gather up the pieces of this guy, whatever's left. I walk out of the room, and the guy has a bit of a dark complexion, and he turned white as a sheet. Because he didn't expect me to walk out of the room.
Expected you to be dead.
He expected me to be in little pieces all over the place.
Oh.
And just like out of the comic strip, if you can imagine this, I had smoke rolling off my body. Like an old-time comic strip. I would have never believed it unless it actually happened to me. But I had smoke rolling off my body because I was right in the middle of this big explosion. This multi-million-dollar prototype machine was reduced to a pile of rubble. It was a 4-foot-high machine. It was reduced down to less than 2 feet by the explosion. Absolutely massive explosion. I was right there. I caught the whole thing. Now,
what
I
was
would
the
say-
explosion fueled by? What was the
well-
accelerant fueling this explosion? I mean, was it
Zirconium-
methane? What?
No, zirconium potassium perchlorate. It's
Okay.
actually an explosive.
Gotcha.
It's used in any personnel missiles, but basically they're nasty little things used for warfare.
We're talking
okay?
about a super accelerant. You're not just adding
yeah.
like gasoline or methane.
Oh yeah. Well, basically, what I felt whenever I was actually standing in front of the machine, I could still feel everything, but it was like, pardon the expression, my guardian angel was protecting me, because what I felt was like a warm breeze blow over me. That's the only thing I felt. I just got nailed by a massive explosion. Professionals in the industry came in after the fact and said, well, we don't know how you survived this, but good on you, because anybody else would have been in little pieces. And that's just the nature of it.
But you had premonitions of this. That's the biggest thing.
I had premonitions of all this. So anyhow, I go out there, and to me, because of the premonitions, because I had this understanding that something was going to happen. I did not know what it was, but because it happened, what ended up is a very different sort of attitude. My attitude was, oh, good, that's over with. Dust myself off. Okay, back to work. And nobody could understand why. Here, I had just gone through something that was considered undoable, that I shouldn't have survived. I walked out of there without a scratch on me. The people, whenever they were looking at me and such, they were looking at me like wondering what was going to happen next. The management, I actually went back to work. The same day, I went back to work, finished out the shift, and the management came in and they debriefed me, because they wondered how, whenever their multi-million-dollar machine had been reduced to a pile of rubble, that I could simply walk away from it and not be hurt.
Now, was
And
there
that's
sort of
exactly
debriefing with
what happened.
intelligence agencies or anybody else in power that would want to know how you survived this and knew about it?
Well, they didn't want anybody to know about it. To be honest with you, they didn't want anybody to know that there was a circumstance that happened there. Now, a few things happened after this, and basically, they debriefed me, and they said, "Oh, take a couple days off. Why don't you go see the psychologist? Why don't you go see the psychiatrist?" Why? The event's over. I'm okay. That's fine. On I go. They could never figure out how I could do that. And it was just that I was so prepared for whatever it was, I just walked away from it. It was easy. I didn't go after the company or anything, because it would put over 400 people out of work. I didn't want to do that. It wasn't in the best interest. So I just went back to work. The people around me, it made me rather uncomfortable, because the people around me, they were looking to, what's going to happen next? I mean, I had done the impossible. I'd survived the impossible without a scratch. Nuts.
Was this because your mind was controlling the matter around you?
Well, at that particular time, I can't really lay specific credit on it because I'd only been using this process for 5 months. It made me highly aware of everything going on around me. It gave me advantage where no one else would have had an advantage. I survived something that no one should have survived. I felt that I had an encounter with my guardian angel. I know I had an out-of-body experience. By the way, I never told the management about the out-of-body experience. I don't think that they would have liked that too well.
No, neither do I. Yeah, they would have found you unfit for the job.
Well, the thing is actually I worked there a couple months more, just because.
If you
But
start
it was still uncomfortable.
they probably would have mentioned some smoking of wacky tobacco or something like that, is my guess.
Actually, I'm as clean as the driven snow that way.
You know what I'm trying to say is if you had mentioned it to them, that's probably where their minds would have gone, because these are very conventional people.
Oh yeah, I mean they could have tested me. It didn't matter because there was nothing there. And whenever I went through this process of basically what this was this is a huge direction change in my life. And an opportunity opened up for me to start working directly with Richard Welch. And from that point on, it's been quite a ride. It's been a great history because I went and I started working for him instead of the explosives company, which didn't appreciate me being around whenever their machine when their machine blew up. But so I experienced a new level of appreciation. That is understanding why this is so important to get it out to people so they can build a better life for themselves, so that they can take advantage of similar things. Not that we suggest that you blow yourself up to test it, but the point is this gives you great advantage in the world. It gives you insights. It gives you information. It gives you, it lets you tap into what your brain really has to offer you. And these are also important today.
Now, let me ask you something. This is sort of on a left field, but within the topic of lies. Lies perpetuated by those at the top about history, people rewriting history in favor for whatever reason, or just to keep us away from the information, sort of like when we spoke before we came on air about the population of this planet, how off the estimates I had and how off the estimates of that most people still use the 6 billion figure. I mean, obviously I had known from the end of the 90s when it was 6 billion. Okay, obviously it has to keep growing from there, especially when you look at the United States Census from every decade from the moment the Census Board was founded. But this slide goes back even further than that. And I just wanted to throw it at you and get your concepts on this. Approximately 2.5 million years ago, there was one of the biggest frauds in history that has been rewritten, was when we stopped being hunters and gatherers and started colonizing lands. In fact, that was to our detriment. And let me tell you why. Because the moment you start to be tied to a land, then you start to farm it, then you start to have villages around it. What happens if you have, say, a bad season and the food goes bad? Then you have famine, or let's just say you have disease, but you cannot get away from the land that you invested so much. So the big lie that I just recently read about was that if we had left or if we had kept being hunters and gatherers as opposed to being tied to land, which is something that has been supported as being a stepping stone for our evolution of man, was actually to humanity's detriment. What do you think about that supposed lie?
Well, which part of it is supposed to be the lie?
The fact that it was good for us, the fact that colonizing land was good for us and leaving hunting gathering behind. That was supposed to be the lie.
Well, hunter and gathering would typically control be a self-control of population based upon supply and demand.
Yes.
Okay, so that would indicate that would be a self-control on our population as well. Okay, now if you outstrip that that particular faculty of the hunter-gatherer type thing, then you either have to move on, you have to be nomadic and move on, or you starve. You have to move on to different grounds. Okay, and due to the nature of that, you tend to have the evolutionary process of selection of the fittest is predominant because you don't have a stationary area that you can take care of people that simply cannot cope with that particular environment. You're not catering to the deficient. You create a stronger person. So I could see where that would actually be to our advantage to be in the hunter-gatherer, because we probably wouldn't be faced with the population issues that we have on the earth today.
That's right.
Also,
that's right.
you would be able to foresee what you're actually doing, and thus, basically, you would have a much healthier population overall. You wouldn't have all these residual effects of poor genome structure or reintegrating poor genome into the evolutionary structure, which human beings are probably the only thing on the planet that does that. We backbreed our own.
That's right.
That's not a good thing. Okay, why is all the evolutionary processes on the planet going the opposite direction? Okay, survival of the fittest. Well, that's because that's the way it's supposed to be. Survival of the fittest. Whenever you backbreed all these problems genetically back into the genetic lines, all you create is more deficiencies, and the deficiencies are growing. So if you take a look at, and again, this is something that people, governments, they don't want to talk about it because it points a lot of fingers back at why are we taking care of so many of these particular issues whenever they actually shouldn't be issues at all. So yes, I guess you could say that in the case of that being a big lie, yes, that's right. Now, alongside that is the concentrated issue with cropping. Okay, after a certain amount of time, you've taken all the goodness out of the soil. In other words, all the microelements and things like this. So you're no longer actually satisfying the health. You're no longer providing the healthy structure that people are supposed to be growing upon. You're very limited as to what types of micronutrients you have to actually build your body. There are some places on the earth that, say, for instance, like over here in Australia, has no selenium in the soil, not in the topsoil anyhow. So there's no selenium here. Now, selenium is necessary for good health. Well, what do you have to do? You have to supplement it because you can't find it in the soil. It just hasn't been here. Maybe a long time ago it has, but not now. And that leads to another topic altogether. But really, the reason why people are obese these days is because they're starving to death.
It's true.
They're starving to death because they're overeating to attempt to make up for all those micronutrients that they simply don't have in their diet. So they're starving and they're eating, and they're starving and they're eating. The problem is the food that they are eating doesn't have the nutrition, doesn't have the things that will keep them healthy. And this is a very big issue these days, is keeping yourself healthy. Well, this is one of the main reasons why people overeat, because the food they eat is not giving them what they want, and their body is telling them, but you need to get this other stuff in.
Yeah,
so
because it's full of
but
junk.
they don't know how to get it.
Yeah,
right.
They're eating junk. Yeah.
Right. And then eventually it becomes more of a psychosis. It has to do with the psychology and the reward system and all the rest of the stuff, which if they simply were getting the right nutrients to begin with, that would probably not have developed. Okay, even sugar. If you take a look back, look back in the 17th and 18th centuries, sugar was only available to the wealthiest people.
That's right. It was.
People didn't have sugar. Yeah. So our bodies were not acclimated to high degrees of sugar, which is being pounded into us today.
Yeah. And that's why you have so many people diabetic and 70% of Americans overweight or obese. That's just within America. I mean, when you talk about globally and the effect that especially processed sugar has had, it's truly horrific. And that was one thing Dr. Shiva didn't say during the interview, but as a medical doctor, one of the concerns he had for the welfare of people generally was sugar. And then, of course, you have groups like Monsanto who come in and take over production of farming. Now, real quick, I want to shift the paradigm of the conversation because we have less than 13 minutes before we come to the end.
Okay. Well, basically, you were just, what you were doing to benefit your listenership, what you were doing is taking a topic out of thin air, and I want to express this. You were taking a topic out of thin air, throwing it at me and say, Shannon, talk about this.
Yeah.
And I can. Why?
No, I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did because you actually.
Why can I do that? It's because I have used mental photography to accumulate vast resources of information and knowledge. And I can talk about virtually anything. And I can come to assumptions based upon all these different pieces of information that I've gathered along the way. So when it comes to a topic like what you're talking about, I actually hadn't heard about the lie until you just mentioned it. Now it makes perfect sense.
But I'm glad you were able to confirm it for me because of the vast knowledge you had. And that's why I brought it up to you, because of your access to the library of all this information. There are two little points that I want to mention. I know we're going to talk about consciousness another time, but I know people who are studying consciousness, specifically people who are dealing with extraterrestrials and consciousness. They talk about dyslexia not as a problem, but as a gift. Can you talk about that or explain that, or would you agree with them or disagree?
I look at dyslexia as an evolutionary rise, the next step in the evolutionary chain or development of the human brain. Because dyslexia, the people are ready for mental photography and not reading. They're ready for information at very high rates of speed. They're not ready for reading because that's too slow. It impinges upon their abilities. That's why dyslexia doesn't work for people, because they're given reading material. Whenever you mentally photograph, you bypass dyslexia altogether, and you get the information at the rate at which the dyslexic loves. Very, very, very fast. Okay? So, yes, we're built for dyslexics as well as everybody else, because that's what we're doing. And when it comes to dyslexia, and whenever it comes to consciousness, these things all come hand in hand. Eventually, and you're starting to see these things, and it depends on whether AI is going to cripple us or not. But eventually, what you will see is things will be driven by consciousness. And it's been revealed to me that even these extraterrestrial craft are actually consciousness drive. That's why they don't see, people that go into these things, they don't actually see any physical controls, but because they're consciousness drive. Well, what that means is that is actually going to be what we finally get to eventually, is moving whatever we need to do, doing those things by our consciousness. By simply thinking about them, they will take place. Now, you can go and look at, law of attraction. You can look at programming, things like that. That's
It's also
fine.
manifestation.
That's a necessary step.
Like we
What
just
I'm
talked
talking
about manifestation is thinking about it and having it happen.
Right. And that's exactly how it is. The adepts, the old adepts, knew how to translocate themselves from point to point around the planet. All they had to do was be able to memorize a specific location, exactly what that specific location looks like. They move themselves into a different dimensional state. They focus on the new picture, and they appear where they're supposed to be. They don't need visas or the rest of all this mess to go from point to point. That's translocation.
Now, here's another
topic. It's a mental process.
How does amnesia fit into this conversation?
Well, amnesia is like you have this big box of files, and now there's all different sorts of amnesia. So I'm just going to give you an overview of one sort. Let's say you have an injury where you banged your head, and suddenly the connections that led to a certain part of your life are no longer there. Well, most people can actually restore those connections. But how do they do that? Well, what we do is whenever we're training people, we talk about neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is something that is a phenomena that takes place naturally within our brain. And it keeps rebuilding our brain. But it's a slow process. If you use mental photography to the point where you're actually making yourself mentally lethargic, the neuroplastic function says, oh, I need to do something to build this up. So it goes into overdrive to build your brain stronger, more resilient, and can actually be used to tap into these old folders that have been lost. All these old files that have been lost. You can actually recreate new lines into those areas and recapture those same things. We're doing it with people that have various levels of amnesia because they've lost track of their memories. The memories are still there. They just need to find a way to tap into them. Well, the mental photography is the way because of what it does.
Now, we got 5 minutes left, and I want to spend the next 5 minutes first talking about where people can get this. I want to tell everybody out there who may be questioning this process, whether it works or not, that it does work. And there's another host on Late Night in the Midlands who can attest to that, and that is Agi Nost. Off air, I was talking to him one day, and I was just asking him, this is before I myself really got into this course and subscribed and went through it. And I said, does it work? Do you truly have do you have a photographic memory, and do you have full retention? And he said that at first, as he became a coach, he was struggling with it. But he realized that the more he started to teach people, one day he just realized that it was there. It's sort of like a switch went on in his head that said, hey, sucker, you know that the reason why you're accessing this or you're able to remember this is because of this process. It's almost as if he came to the realization that the reason why he had these abilities or was able to use these abilities was because of what he learned through your program. And that to me was something big, because there's a lot of people that have testimonials that talk about this, a lot of people that I've spoken to who have gone through this course. But this is somebody who was also somebody you could say neutral, a friend, a guest, and also a host. And the reason why I bring him up, Aginas, of course, is because I only came across him thanks to you. And so I figured since he is not just a coach, but somebody who uses this process and can affirm that it does work, that he's a great plug-in for that. But aside from me plugging that, I'm going to let you take the floor.
Well, the photographic memory is a natural ability that everybody has. It has been shanghaied from you, and you can get it back. You can gain access to it, and you can start using it in your daily life to make a better life for yourself in so many different ways. It really depends upon you as to how you want to employ it. Well, those are the different things on what you can do with it. So, as a person begins this travel, you have to remember, most people have been indoctrinated with the big lie, and that is you must get everything verbatim through reading. That's the biggest lie that we have going, because it jeopardizes everything that we stand for as human beings. Because reading statistically is proven to be ineffective, and we have to get the information some other way. And this is where the mental photography comes in. So it enables us to use photographic memory. The photographic memory, by us using this on an ongoing basis, it makes our brain stronger, more resilient. As we make our brain stronger, we can do more. We can become more effective of everything that we're doing in life. And we also become healthier. Why? Because when our brain is healthy, we become healthy. Also, decision making. Our entire life is set up on the decisions that we make and the results of those decisions. Most people walk around in this dream state, this mesma, this fog of indecision. You want to clean up your mind? Use the mental photography. It takes away the fog. It allows you to start making proper decisions again. So there's so many different benefits to this. To me, it's a no-brainer. Why would anybody not want to do it? You want a relationship? Gee, well, hey, that's great. But wouldn't you like to know the best way to get that relationship going?
Or
Finances.
anything, like you said, it is a no-brainer, because, or anything for that matter, having anything, it all comes down to
Everything Everything starts in the brain first.
And it's all at
Even-
everyone's fingertips.
That's right. So you master the brain, you master your life.
Let's
That's what
plug in
this is all
the
about.
sites before we run out of time, because as it hits the next
Oh,
minute,
okay.
we will be out of the time.
Okay. At the on the bottom of your page, you have that link.
Yes.
Now
the banner.
the link goes to zoxpro.com/DRJ for Dr. J. Now the reason why I want to tell you about the DRJ thing is because the value of this program is well in excess of $500. The ZoxPro training. It's well in excess of $500. Well, gee, I don't know if I want to invest in that. Well, actually, on the DRJ area, we have it at $167. We have knocked the price way down for Dr. J to be able to get this out there to his people at a really great price. Why? Because you need this.
Agreed. And honestly, that is a bargain that once you realize what it is really worth, some people will charge 10 times even more than that. And once you realize that what the true value of this, it's priceless. You really can't put a financial number to this, because what it unlocks, the abilities you'll have. And when you talk, Dr. Shannon Panza, when you talk about endless possibilities, I mean, this is truly endless. The brain, our brain, the way it is, everybody else, I'm talking about in general, is too simplified to even comprehend how endless the possibilities are. So I implore everybody, the same way I implored Dr. Shiva to have Senator Warren, also known as Pocahontas, to have her DNA tested. I implore everybody listening to this, everybody seeing or hearing our old shows or seeing that banner, to please go to zoxpro.com, enroll in the course, and learn to manage your brain. And when you actually do, please come and reach out to me and talk to me about it. You know, I'd love to create a board of other testimonials that have come directly from listeners from the show. Let me plug in a few things before we go. Of course, I want to thank all the great people here at Late Night in the Midlands. I want to thank Daryl and Katie Neely, of course, also who have been very fundamental in the background. Of course, also Michael Vara. The other networks the shows these go to. We also have Paranormal King, PSN, and these are in the United States, and in the United Kingdom, Deprogrammed and Pulse Talk Radio Network. Remember, folks, the only name you have to remember is the name of the show, DRJ Radio Live, Dr. J Radio Live. That is the name for every social media account you can think of, from YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Flickr, Tumblr, Twitter, you name it. It's all the same word. How can you mess that up, right? And remember, don't forget about the YouTube channel. That is where shows get archived. You'll also find some exclusive content. Sometimes there are interviews that are too short to have made it to air, or sometimes there are videos that we can't show. We can only show visually, and that's why you have to check out the YouTube channel. And also, it doesn't hurt to register on the site, since everything is free. There's always free archives. There's always free, you name it. That's the great part about it. I like to keep everything free, listening free, archives free, free newsletters for that. So with that being said, everybody, I'd like to give Dr. Panzo a final sentence before I end the show. Dr. Panzo.
Thank you very much, Dr. J. I really do appreciate being here today. And if you're anywhere around Dr. J's page, drjradiolive.com, make sure you go to the bottom of the page. There's a link there that will take you directly to that page I was talking about, zoxpro.com/DRJ. It'll take you right there, and that way you get some more information. And, we have a few freebies there as well. But main thing is get that information, get yourself started building your brain. and make your better life starting today.
There's also one great freebie I don't want to mention without giving it away, but it is so valuable that I implore you folks to get this course, because that freebie is right there, and you'll see how instantly you can apply it, and to not just one thing, but to a lot of things. So with that being said, folks, I hope you had a very exciting and diverse show, since we had two guests talking about literally two completely different things. And of course, we always like to bring diversity to the show, and we will do the same Thursday with a whole other topic. With that being said, folks, this is Dr. J of Dr. J Radio Live, and we are officially signing off. Sayonara.